Hello. Hey, Vignesh. How are
Hi,
you?
David. How are you?
Doing well. So I think we can start
Yes.
for this pre-recorded session of the Winter Adtech virtual event. We're good, right? In our cozy cottages.
Yeah, at least in the cold weather, we got a nice virtual fire going at the back.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Vignesh, for sharing this fireside chat, which I'm really happy to have with you. Before jumping in the conversation, I think it's good if we give a bit of context around this transparency concept, which currently is really everywhere. We see indeed an increased need for transparency in all fields. Consumer want transparency over what they eat, over what they buy. User want transparency over what is done with their data. People want transparency everywhere across the board. And in our industry as well, we see that there is a growing need for transparency, as of course, more and more spend is moving to digital, and more specifically is moving to programmatic. So I'm sure you heard as well of this study led by PwC and named the Programmatic Supply Chain Transparency. The goal of this study was really to know where the money is going in the programmatic chain, considering that there are many intermediaries, but it's not always easy to know exactly what each one is bringing. So this study's goal was to map all the programmatic spend from end to end. And the conclusions were kind of scary because according to this study, 50% of the spend actually goes to working media, 35% is going to the disclosed fees of the agencies and adtech vendors. But still there is 15%, which is kind of disappearing into a black hole that they were not able to track. So not only there is kind of lost money in the chain, but also it's getting harder and harder to keep track of where the money goes. So my first question, Vignesh, is in the light of this study, what are your brands expecting and also your agencies in terms of transparency?
Awesome. Nice topic to open up this event, David. The PwC report has been one of the most widely discussed report this year. It's interesting to note that around 4% of marketers actually face executive scrutiny on their ad spend performance, according to recent research that MediaMath and Forrester did. Consequently, these marketers also depend on their ad tech partners across the ecosystem now more than ever. If you look at brands, they want to basically have clarity on where their media dollars are going, right? They want more insights into the overall ad experience or the infrastructure. They want to actually know that their impressions are reaching known people and it's not fraudulent, right? They want to make sure that they are able to see the right calculation of ROI based on real media cost across the supply chain. And they want better audit over the fees, regardless of where it's originated from, as far as the brands are concerned. But the moment you move down to agencies feel the need to demonstrate value to clients, right? They want to be able to exercise control. They want to reduce the number of middlemen. Essentially, they want to be the stewards of the marketplace, and they want to be the experts to guide the brands to make sure that they're making the right decision when it comes to executing their marketing budgets. So I believe that transparency is required across the supply chain, and we, the technology partners for the brands and the agencies, we need to be able to support them in this endeavor.
Okay, interesting to see that there are really two different views in terms of either agencies or advertisers.
Yeah, David, how are you tackling transparency with your publisher clients, right? Because on one end, you are trying to improve better fill rates, etc., for the publishers. At the same, you are also trying to balance advertisers' needs in terms of outcomes. How are you trying to balance both these on your end?
Yeah, so at Smart, we really have embraced market standards very early. They appeared in market. So first, of course, ads.txt, then in-app ads.txt, and more recently, Sales JSON and SEO. We have always been early adopters of those, and we are really pushing strongly our publishers to adopt all of those standards. We try to educate them, let's say, on the importance of such standards. And we're really discussing that on the day-to-day with them, because we're convinced that ultimately that benefits both sides of the business, buy side and sell side. And for valuable premium publishers, which really is the heart of our business, transparency is also a way to get more revenue ultimately, because a premium publisher with valuable inventory will benefit from it, whereas less qualitative publisher or non-value added intermediary will ultimately be disadvantaged, which is really what we're looking for and which is fair.
That's really interesting.
If we look at fee transparency, we see that there is still some kind of reluctance from some of the publishers. Let's say it's not yet a widespread market practice, but we're confident that it is something which will become more of a standard probably next year and moving forward.
Awesome. That's very interesting to hear, David. And on the other end, for buy-side clients, right? How are you? How are you working with them to give more transparency to clients? Clients like us.
Yeah, fair question, because indeed, in the end, the goal is really to bring transparency to the buy side. So over the past year, we've seen that there has been this increased request for transparency from our DSP partners and from our agencies as well, for several reasons. First one, the rise of header bidding that leads to a multiplication of paths toward the inventory. Second reason, DSPs are more and more cautious about preventing inventory duplication across channels. Third reason is that DSPs always want to get closer to the supply, to really have this direct link with the supply. And finally, with the rising importance of identity topic in the context of GDPR and CCPA, passing ID through long supply paths is, of course, much more complex. So in terms of initiatives, concrete initiatives, apart from being early adopters of IAB quality standards, which I was mentioning, we launched in beta still a scoring system, which goal is to give more viewability to the demand with regards to the added value of the inventory sources we work with. Okay, so that new system is based on 3 sets of criteria, essentially. First one being the sales outsourcing, so what share the deal represent in total revenue of that given publisher. Second criteria is around quality standards, so basically the level of compliance to IAB quality industry standards, so the one that I was mentioning, SEO, sales JSON, ad.txt. And finally, a key indicator as well, the inventory directness. So really, the goal is to give credit to inventory providers that are working with direct publishers, okay? And then based on that, ultimately, our goal is really to have concrete decisions made out of this scoring. So typically, we are starting to implement guidelines to shift onboarding new inventory or new seller even more towards high value added inventory only. We're also starting to disregard, throttle more aggressively non-performing, low-scoring inventory. And we're also restricting access to some DSPs for some sellers which are not scoring high enough. Okay? And really the goal here is to create a virtuous cycle for our sellers to adopt industry standards and shift their inventory acquisition towards end publishers, premium publishers. So after having this sales side view, let's say, it would be very interesting for me to know what are MediaMath initiatives to increase transparency across the entire ecosystem, because we've heard a lot about MediaMath new solution, which I guess you will tell me more about, and I would really be interested in having your view on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thanks for sharing that, what you're doing on the supply side with regards to the publishers. With what MediaMath is doing on the buy side, especially is to basically, we have launched an industry-led initiative called SOURCE which is basically a curated group of leading programmatic partners who are measured and scored on a collection of technology signals, which are fundamental to achieving an accountable and addressable ecosystem, right? Which are aligned to marketer outcomes, right? So how we have done that is we have actually launched a SOURCE Ecosystem Scorecard, which basically is a document designed to educate and create transparency around partners that drive value to advertisers via the supply chain technology signals, right? That each SSP partner supports. The scorecard rates each ecosystem partner based on 9 source signals that signals directly to MediaMath's ability to deliver tangible value to buyers, right? So this can come in form of like data availability, reporting, UI features, etc. Right? So what we're doing is we are using the scorecard to mold our supply chain and the partners who we work with to drive competition amongst them and the urgency to innovate. And that helps us provide more value to our buyers. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting. And really for us, this initiative SOURCE is clearly very positive, and we're really happy to be scored on SOURCE, because for us, that really brings the industry toward the good direction. What we see is that MediaMath has really been at the forefront of this market trend around transparency. And for us as an SSP, it's very important because that enables us to understand what DSPs actually see on our how they rank and value the inventory of our publishers versus competition, and based on which criteria. So with SOURCE, we really have all of this. And the fact that all these criteria are made transparent to us is clearly a plus as well, because we know what we can improve to change our ranking and ultimately impact the spend. So we really see it as a very positive move. Can you maybe give us more insights on the signals you actually take into account, the 9 signals you were mentioning?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's we need to be transparent as well, right? So the source pillars are actually 3, right? One is accountable, addressable, and then we are talking about aligned. When we talk about accountable, there are 3 source signals under accountable. We talk about feed transparency, where we are working with our SSP partners to make sure that all the bid requests come in with fees that they charge with their underlying partners, and that's so that 100% of the bids actually come in with the fees that we can then pass on to the buyers, right? So that's one. The second one is actually supply authorization signals, where we are basically talking about making sure that the bid requests come in with stuff like ads.txt, sellers.json, supply chain object, right? And the third one would be actually inventory type, where they're actually able to send out stuff like they're able to send stuff like a skippability and so on. That's under accountability. And addressability, we basically talking about fraud and invalid traffic, making sure that 100% of the bid opportunities are actually pre-filtered, right? Along with authorized partners. We also talking about identity, making sure that there are 100% of the opportunities actually come in with an identity signal that make it easier for brands to actually do better frequency capping at a user level instead of at a device level, which we're doing right now. And obviously on unique channel identifiers, like 100% of the opportunities come with approved identifiers passed, right? So that helps us basically optimize towards those partners who are actually providing value. The last one is actually on alignment. One is on bid feedback. For example, which of those partners are actually passing us bid feedback on, hey, you haven't won an auction. Why is that we haven't won an auction? What is the reason for us not winning the bid? Or if we are winning the bid, then what is the second price of the auction? That helps us do better bid shading, right? And helps us determine the value of the inventory as well. And the second one is on in terms of alignment is actually on brain sync. Brain sync is actually one of the most interesting topics for me, simply because that it's a tool where DSPs and SSPs can start sharing information, intelligent information, where, For example, we can pass on stuff like what are our goals of the advertiser, what are the budgets like, etc. Right? So this information can be used effectively by the SSP to work and figure out what could be the best inventory that a publisher can pass on that will help the advertiser hit their goals. Right? That's quite interesting for me. And the last one is actually on in terms of impression counting, where we are actually billing them based on the ads rendered. Right. So these 9 signals actually are quite simple. Each partner is actually scored against each of these parameters, and that helps us mold the supply chain towards better outcomes.
Very interesting. So you started to mention how can DSPs and SSPs really partner together and really share information. Are there, do you see other ways that an SSP and a DSP, let's say, for instance, MediaMath and Smart, can partner to deliver a performant and dynamic supply chain?
I think we are already on that path, David. Sometime back, you were talking about how you are implementing a similar card towards your publishers. We are implementing a similar scorecard or a version of scorecard as well for our team. So I think across the supply chain, there needs to be alignment. I think generally across the industry, we need to move from just participating in these initiatives to actually being an evangelist, right? We need to actually do it exactly what you guys are doing with your publisher ecosystem. I think that's what is going to change. And we want to partner with all the ecosystem stakeholders to make sure that all of us are driving this together. It's not a single person-led initiative or a single company initiative. We need to do this as an ecosystem. And that's where you guys come in as well. So I'm glad to see that there's already so much synergy and that we can capitalize on.
Yeah, indeed, you can count on Smart, and we're strongly pushing as well toward transparency, this strong collaboration, especially with MediaMath. So we really see it as very positive. Huh?
Yeah. David, also one question before we finish our 20-minute chat. How do you see identity evolving in EMEA markets, and how are you guys positioning yourself working with identity partners? Because we are in a fragmented market with multiple partners, with some having scale, some not, and it's evolving quite fast. But how are you guys positioning yourself for it?
Yeah, indeed, key topic. So our belief is that there will be several ideas, let's say, not just one, mainly for reach reasons. So that's why at Smart, we have decided to consider all possible initiatives around ideas and not just to embrace one. Huh? So let's take, for instance, a recent initiative, Unified ID 2.0. We think that's a good initiative, and ultimately it's really about adoption. Huh? There needs to be wide adoption to allow advertisers to have this wide reach I was mentioning. Yeah. And really our goal is to, and our hope, I would even say, is that there will be a strong alternative to the privacy sandbox from Google to ensure that there is diversity in the ecosystem and that there is not just one player basically in charge of this identity topic. So we need to keep diversity in our industry is the key goal, and I'm sure you're sharing it as well, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think we have for identity as well, we have an open, our strategy is more of having an open system where we work with multiple partners across the ecosystem. And I think that's the way to go about it. I don't think we are aligned with one partner, and we are happy to work with as many partners in the ecosystem to make sure that we are all able to deliver value.
Great. I think we're running out of time, so it's time to go back to ski for us.
Yes, let's do that in our living rooms.
Great. Thanks a lot, Vignesh. I was really happy to share this conversation with you.
Thank you, David. It was great chatting with you.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
So, who stops the recording?